Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Tiana here, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of another Super Mario 3D, a ROM hack of Super Mario 64 DS for the Nintendo DS. So, last time, we somehow managed able to get started the forms of the actual main adventure by able to actually experiencing not one, but two worlds so far. So generally speaking, that was about the fact that for the first world, we did somehow manage able to so far only collected 7 power stars, and in addition to that though, as far as the second world is concerned, that we somehow managed able to collect it for about 3 power stars so far. So logically though, we've somehow collected 10 power stars so far out of 73. So because of that though, yeah, you can probably get the idea about for the fact that this particular playthrough is going to be a little bit shorter in comparison to the forms of the main Super Mario 64 DS as a game itself. So because of that though, yeah, today for this video is that we are about to be collecting some even more power stars, not only for this particular world we're going to be jumped back into already, but also about the fact that we can able to obtain some more power stars in a later world. So because of that though, yeah, I somehow accidentally obtained the wrong power star from the last video, but that was mainly because I couldn't figure out the forms of the specific route for able to actually access to the third mission. So because of that though, hopefully though we will able to try to succeed for this time, and without any major issues or anything else like that, despite the fact that we accidentally come across into our first step of the playthrough already, due to hesitation about the forms of that particular narrow path. So, oh well, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. So, hopefully we'll gather some more 1-ups eventually, thanks to the forms of, you know, the 100 coin power star missions, and during the forms of, you know, the later parts to come. So, anyway. So, a few things I want to talk about this is though, and that's what appears to be for the fact that, well, today's date, of course, there is the 8th of July today, in some cases in 2025 today, so much to the point, only roughly 9 more days to go until Donkey Kong Bonanza for the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be getting closer to its release, and on top of that, only 3 more days to go until, to be more specifically, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 Plus 4 is going to be releasing on every single platforms up until that point. And on top of that, we've only just got about, I would classify as saying, 16 days to go until Super Mario Party Jamboree Nintendo Switch 2 Edition plus Jamboree TV is going to be on its way too. So generally speaking, yeah, as you can see on that particular top screen, Mr. I is not going to be defeatable as Yoshi. So because of that though, we have to make sure we need to able to become Mario for this, or technically you can also do it with Luigi as well, but of course we haven't exactly able to actually access to Luigi just yet, until to be more specifically for later on. So either way, because chances are though, as you can tell, that we somehow activate the Switch familiar, and that way we were able to actually try to deal with the forms of that familiar Mr. I, ever since enduring the forms have been Big Boo Hut, ever since the new forms of not only in Super Mario 64, but in addition to Super Mario 64 DS as well. But obviously though, the major difference is this time it does manage to take place in a different environment, if you probably already know by now. So, and there are some interesting news I would like to point things out in regards to the forms of what's been happening throughout the course of the forms of not only the past few days, but also the most recent time of events. Such as, for instance though, is about the fact that I'm pretty sure that we've only got about 14 days to go until, let's just say, the Pokemon Presents is getting closer to upon us. So hopefully we'll hear more about the forms of Pokemon Legends ZA, not only for Switch 1, but in addition to Switch 2 version as well. And on top of that, we might able to actually hear more about several surprises here and there, in addition to the forms of Pokemon Champions, for the sake of the forms of, I have no idea when that particular game is going to be releasing exactly, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be releasing during around the time when Pokemon is about to be celebrating the 30th anniversary during at some point until next year. So that's my speculation anyway. So anyway, there we go. That pretty much does it for this mission right here. now let's head back in here to do the next mission, which, suffice to say, we have to grab all those red coins, basically. So because of that, now, I'm sure enough, though, about the fact that one of those missions coming up does require Wario for this. And I'm sure enough, though, about the fact that I'm pretty sure it's possible we can able to actually do one of those missions as, one of those alternative runs, but we're probably not going to focus on those for right now, just because, as you can definitely tell, for the fact that we'll try our best if we're able to actually just try to go for the— Whoa! Almost slid down there, but I do know there's actually one of those missions that appears to be like an opposite version of trusting the forms of those signposts or anything else like that, so yeah, we'll guarantee to able to actually come across into that eventually, so— Anywho though, so, and it's also reassuring about this too, is that remember when, I believe that, I suppose that Joel has technically mentioned about this, but I'm also able to say this again anyway, so, basically though, it's about the fact that apparently though, a lot of players out there seems to can't be bothered able to actually go back on playing through, Mario Kart World for now, in terms of the forms of online experience, but it's mainly because no matter what though, things has been changed slightly, which as a result, it does bother a lot of fans out there, which as a result though, it reminds me of so much of the forms of not only changing the gameplay style from the likes of the forms of both Mario Party 9 all the way up to Mario Party 10 with the car mechanic, but in addition to the forms of the battle system for the likes of the forms of not only Paper Mario Sticker Star, in addition to Paper Mario Color Splash as well, and heck, even with the forms of the Origami King as well. So suffice to say though, is about the fact that the intermissions are basically slightly, well, it's hard for me to explain personally though, because it has been about quite a few days since I actually have last experienced not only my Nintendo Switch 2, but in addition to the forms of well, playing through Mario Kart World on my spare own time. So because of that, speaking of the forms of the Nintendo Switch 2 actually, I've recently managed able to finally got myself the 256 gigabytes in terms of the forms of the microSD Express card. So because of that, I finally managed able to almost got the entire Nintendo Switch 2, everything else all set up. I mean, the only thing it needs left now is, of course, the carrying case, which that's not going to happen anytime soon, just because no matter what though, is about the fact that it's still one of those earlier days. For the sake of the forms of trying to take my Nintendo Switch 2 anywhere I go. So hopefully by that time, once we get towards the forms of sometime in October for some time, that way it gives me my huge opportunity to able to actually try to get myself the carrying case for Nintendo Switch 2. Which, the only thing is a little bit difficult for me is about the fact that I need to choose the good quality in terms of the forms of the Nintendo Switch 2 carrying case. So, yeah, I shall wait and see what happens in due time. So, either way. So, yeah, as you can tell, we somehow managed able to get quite enough power stars as it is. So I suppose we'll be back for that particular world once we do manage able to unlock the last few, well, let's just say unlocking not only Mario, but in addition to Luigi, and most importantly, Wario for one of the missions. So, suffice it to say though, is about the fact that it might take a bit while to able to actually try to unlock every characters in the game. So, but either way, let's unlock the next door, which appears to be taking place in that familiar snowy environment, and apparently though, I ended up in the wrong order in terms of the forms of the world selection, but oh well, beggars can't be choosers I guess. So here we go, on to the next course, which appears to be called Hot Hot Snowland, which is basically like a combination of the forms of Cool Cool Mountain, as well as the forms of Lethal Lava Land, all immersed into one. So as a result though, it almost kind of reminds me like a similar vibes as the forms of Shiverburn Galaxy from the likes of Super Mario Galaxy 2, and in addition to the forms of Freeze Flame Galaxy from the likes of, let's say, the original Super Mario Galaxy. So, chances are that was about the fact that it reminds me of so much of that particular concept. So, but anyway, the first mission on here is pretty self-explanatory. We have to make our way to the very top of the mountain, while at the same time though, we have to get used to with the forms of not only ice physics, but in addition to that, apparently the regular bullies did somehow manage to make its appearance in this particular place. So, kind of strange kind of thing about it. well, regardless of such though, they behave exactly like the forms of how it does it in both Super Mario 64 as well as Super Mario 64 DS at the same time. So, but either way, the first mission in that world is fully complete very easily. Nice and self-explanatory, like I said before. So, either way. Because yeah, I'm pretty sure enough though is about the fact that there's also another thing else I'd like to explain to you all for something, is that there might be some rumors out there, despite the fact that I still don't trust rumors anymore, like I've already established that in the past, that they might able to actually state about the fact that there may be, just maybe, they're able to actually try to bring out not only one, but 2 games might potentially get added for the Nintendo 64 Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, and that's what appears to be both. Not only Donkey Kong 64, but also say applies with the forms of Super Smash Bros. As well. I mean, time will definitely tell though. I suppose maybe they'll try to mention more about it until whenever they do manage to bring out the next Nintendo Direct, because it has been about almost 3 months ago since we've last had the general Direct focuses on Nintendo Switch 2 since in April 2nd, although the previous Direct we've already had one, and as of course focuses on Donkey Kong Bonanza just before the game actually comes out during that time. So either way though, there's also reassuring about this too, that they somehow did address about the fact that they might be potentially going to bring Super Mario Galaxy 2 as a remaster or something, for able to try to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Super Mario Bros. Franchise. I mean, again, it's a bit hard to judge at this point right about now, just because still I don't trust rumors and leaks anymore, just because sometimes though it can be feels likely it becomes like a trap. So at least as far as I'm aware of. So, but that's just me. So anyway though, and also as far as I'm aware about the fact that apparently though that the sequel to Ratatouille is going to be reportedly in the works at Disney. So yeah, I suppose if that seems to be the case, then I'm definitely going to be excited for the sake of the films of Ratatouille 2, because, well, if that becomes reality though, assuming of course on sometime in during the films being later on in the year, that D23 might potentially try to bring some more details about the films of some upcoming projects in the future. Specifically though, the next Pixar film they're about to be releasing at some point, and as of course I would say not only Hoppers, but in addition to Toy Story 5 as well, so that's going to be until next year. And as far as we already know, that Incredibles 3 and son of a Mr. Blizzard, why did you ruin my run? So much for getting that Switch Star over there. I hate you, Mr. Blizzard, sometimes. I really do. Especially that you always pop out of nowhere, and no matter what, though, that you're just trying to able to, well, actually hurt me, so. Oh well, I suppose it really doesn't matter, because depending on what characters you're going to be using, either Yoshi, Mario, Luigi, and Wario especially, obviously though you can still able to actually catch a ride on that particular green shell, to able to actually surf around not only water, but in addition to lava as well. You know, just like the forms of how it does it in Lethal Lava Land and all that stuff, so. Alright, let's just make sure we have to succeed this time without some sort of mistakes here. All thanks to the faults that gosh darn Mr. Blizzard enemy. And there we go. Second time's the charm. Nice. And also, you probably already know for the fact that I believe that anyone else out there who owns the actual Nintendo Switch 2 already, that they are very excited able to actually go ahead and play Super Mario Strikers or Mario Smash Football if you lived in European countries already. So chances are though is about the fact it is nice that we can able to actually experience the very good Mario Football game at the very least on Nintendo Switch 2 at the very least, rather than the Battle League, because in Battle League's case it feels rather bare bones and there's not much content here and there, and also it doesn't help about the fact with the stupid you know, post-game free update system. I mean, chances are though, that kind of ruins the experience when it comes to most players. So, I mean, maybe there might be a good chance when it comes to the forms of the later GameCube games will be added to the actual Nintendo Switch 2 online expansion pack or something like that, maybe about the fact that since that we've already got the first of the 4 Mario sports games specifically for the Nintendo GameCube on the actual online expansion pack, I suppose we've only down to 3 left, which appears to be Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, and in addition to Mario Power Tennis, and of course Mario Superstar Baseball, which I'm still really hoping that Nintendo will eventually bring back the Mario Baseball series for that matter, but chances are though is about the fact I highly doubt it for this point, especially because after what just happened, for the sake of the forms of bad reception due to the forms of that particular, well, you know what I'm talking about with Mario Strikers Battle League Football, but that's besides the point. So alright, so it looks like it's time to able to turn into Mario to do this part right here, taking a notice from the likes of in Whomp's Fortress, and logically though, we can able to now proceed onto the volcano section, so yeah, similar to the forms of how it does it in Lethal Lava Land, basically, except now, we actually come across into more obstacles here and there, so either way. Now, I'm pretty sure enough, though, is about the fact I somehow got a different star. So, because of that, I wouldn't mind it at all, because, you know, much like Super Mario 64, as well as Super Mario 64 DS, it really doesn't matter what power star I might able to actually try to go for this point, especially considering about the fact it's entirely up to you. Although, ultimately though, in order to able to actually get to the final boss in this particular ROM hack of the game, I'm pretty sure we need to gather for about 50 power stars in order to able to actually face off against with Bowser. Now, speaking of Bowser in general, in the actual ROM hack itself, unlike any forms of how it does it in Super Mario 64, as well as Super Mario 64 DS, well, technically in Super Mario 64, you do need about 70 power stars in order to able to reach to Bowser, whilst in Super Mario 64 DS, you do need to acquire 80 power stars in order to able to reach to Bowser. So in this ROM hack anyway, we only need to collect about roughly 50 of those power stars. So, and on top of that, in terms of the forms of boss battles department though, I'm pretty sure we're probably not going to fight as much bosses in this ROM hack compared to the forms of how it does it in, not only in Super Mario 64, but in addition to Super Mario 64 DS as well. Oh jeez Louise, that was close. I'm almost going to get burned by a lava. Well, thankfully though, about the fact that thanks to the forms of Yoshi's Flutter Jump, that way we should able to actually claim the star without any some sort of issues. So, I suppose that's pretty much about it for the most part. Anyway, so now let's move on to the next mission right here, which I believe this is actually going to be the red coin mission as far as I'm aware. And I believe, suffice to say, I think this could be possible without the fact that we can able to potentially try to able to actually gather every single power stars in this whole entire world. So, yeah, that should be pretty surprising. Especially considering about the fact that despite we did have some bit of troubles here and there sometimes, but regardless of such though is about the fact that there's highly no doubts we're able to actually get ourselves our game over for the sake of the forms of multitude of like Mario games in particular. Well, apart from the fact that, well, sometimes though about the fact that it's hard for me to explain personally, because we already know for the fact that, you know, we've only just got about 2 months left now until Nintendo will eventually get able to actually just, you know, celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Super Mario Bros. Franchise. We still have no idea what surprises they'll bring us into, although, as far as I'm aware, spoiler alert, I don't think it's possible we can able to see some more Mario Kart Tour content, as far as I'm aware, just because no matter what though is about the fact that after all, that every single content for that game is now officially ended, since Journey Forms have been around 2023 for some time, and also chances are though is about the fact I still don't usually touch upon that game that much anymore, just because it's now been overshadowed by not only Mario Kart Wii, but in addition to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for Switch, and on top of that, with Mario Kart World as well for the Nintendo Switch 2. Although, like I said before, it's about the fact it's a bit of a bummer that most players out there seems to now quit playing Mario Kart World in terms of online play. Well, that's just mainly because, like I said before, they changed things significantly in terms of rules, or especially noticeable with the forms of patch updates here and there. So chances are though is about the fact that as a result, it might be pretty hard to come back into the forms of that particular online experience when it comes to likely racing against with every other people in worldwide. Basically though, it's about the fact that, like what someone did say during the informs of one of those community posts in the past, they did say it about the fact that Nintendo has released update 1.1.2 version update for Mario Kart World, which includes a controversial change. Until now, the random option in the online mode guaranteed a traditional 3-lap track, which obviously though that's what most people really get accustomed to. Since in Super Mario Kart, well, despite the fact that in Super Mario Kart you can only race around for about 5 laps in particular, whilst in Mario Kart 64 and onwards though, obviously though we get traditional 3-lap tracks, so that's pretty standard. But with the update, intermission tracks can now be also appear in a random selection, making things a lot harder to race on a traditional track. So because of that though, yeah, it's gonna be one of those moments where the fact that, like I said before, that particular update is very controversial for some people, especially because no matter what though, they always attempt to prefer classic roles or classic traditional gameplay. You know, just like the Evolves of how it does it with any other Mario Party games in the past, like Mario Party 1 all the way up to Mario Party DS, because it wasn't until when Mario Party 9 and Mario Party 10 rolls around, basically though, they changed the gameplay a lot, thanks to the Evolves of the car mechanics. Whilst in the Island Tour, it just feels all over the place when it comes to gameplay rules and gameplay mechanics. And meanwhile, for the likes of Star Rush and the Top 100, they both utilize this grid-based board gameplay. Although, to be fair though, the minigames are still fun in terms of every single Mario Party games up to that point. Although, thankfully though, with the forms of not only Mario Party Superstars, but also with the forms of Super Mario Party Jamboree, thankfully though, they managed to bring back the actual traditional gameplay style at the very least. Well, usually for Super Mario Party back in 2018, it was awfully close to able to actually go back into a traditional style, but ultimately though, the boards are very small, which makes things not as memorable as anyone else hoped. And on top of that, dice blocks are still 1 through 6 for the most part, and generally speaking, I was about the fact that, well, I'm still very appreciative about the fact that with the forms of Mario Party Superstars and Super Mario Party Jamboree, thankfully brings back the forms of, you know, the dice blocks 1 through 10. You know, just like we were used to back in Journey forms of in the old days, you know? And on top of all that stuff, though, with the forms of Paper Mario in mind, that thankfully, though, we, you know, already got ourselves a full-on remake of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, which makes things 10 times as much more better to able to experience the game compared to the forms of how it does it on 3 of those modern Paper Mario games in the past, ranging from, you know, Sticker Star, Color Splash, and as well as the Origami King. Although, don't get me wrong, I still find the Origami King to be a bit of a better game of the 3 in terms of the forms of the modern Paper Mario games in particular, but it's not exactly the best installment either. And as a result though, gee, no wonder why about the fact that a lot of players out there absolutely despise Paper Mario Sticker Star now, just because of all that. Well, you get the idea with all the like generic themes and the lack of original characters, and not only that though, the story is very nonsensical. And on top of all that stuff though, it's about the fact that Bowser never speaks at all in Sticker Star, because as a result, it just somehow ruins the actual personality in terms of the forms of not only for the sake of comedy, but also with the forms of humor or jokes for that matter. So, I mean, it just feels like a waste of opportunity when it comes to Sticker Star in mind, which, still, like when Maxi has already established that before, there is absolutely no way in heck to able to actually try to tackle through Sticker Star in our Let's Play departments, because it's going to be not only super boring, but in addition to that though, extremely tedious, and not to mention though, it's not going to be that fun. So, that's one way to put it, you know? But anyway, and now with the forms of in a Mario Kart series of games, obviously though about the fact that we now have the actual edition for Mario Kart Worlds, which does bother a lot of players out there. especially again, if you really want to experience online, then obviously doubt about the fact that we are basically now stuck with the phones, the intermission system. In terms of driving through highways and all that stuff though, which as a result, still it does bother a lot of players out there, which I understand just because obviously though what makes the actual other Mario Kart game so great in terms of multiplayer. Now I can totally see why. There are a lot of players out there decides they're able to go back on playing not only Mario Kart Wii from time to time, but in addition to the forms of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, because at the very least with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, we've got jam-packed full of track selections, well, all thanks to the forms of the Booster Course Pass and everything, and on top of all that stuff though, great character roster despite, you know, Metal Mario and Pink Gold Peach was still there. Although, I'm very still appreciated about the fact that with Mario Kart World, thankfully does not bring back not only Metal Mario, but in addition to Pink Gold Peach, because I still find this to be very unnecessary in terms of the forms of playable characters department, in terms of the forms of the Mario Kart game, in addition to Mario Kart Tour as well, but that's besides the point, you know? But either way, so now we've actually got all of those red coins, but either way, I suppose no matter what though, we can pretty much guarantee for the fact that we'll try to able to actually go for the 100 coin Power Star mission in the forms of this world, if we get onto the final mission, in terms of the forms of that, you know, hot Snowland, as far as the world itself goes. So, I mean, for the most part though, we actually doing that particular world pretty swell, despite the fact that we accidentally died due to the forms of that particular shell surfing department on the lava and everything. So, oh well, no big deal though, because still we can easily guarantee to able to actually grind as many of those extra lives as we could during at some point in the later missions to come. So, but I digress. So, oh yeah, and it's also reassuring about this too, about the fact that, well, generally speaking though, in regards to the forms of some, let's just say, in terms of the forms of anniversaries department, as far as film itself goes, well, did you guys know, for the fact that no matter what though, it's been 10 years ago since TED 2 did first came out, which I definitely heard about it, especially it's all thanks to about the fact that yes indeed, they did manage to bring a lot of My Little Pony references in during the forms of TED 2, and it's all thanks to the forms of the cosplay kind of setup or something like that. And in addition to that though, also as far as I'm aware, happy 10th anniversary of the game's release of the forms of Batman Arkham Knight for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and PC versions, despite the fact that some people seem to complain about the PC version back then because of the forms of glitches and all that jazz, as far as I've definitely heard about it. I mean, mind you though, it's been a very long time since I actually have last known about Batman Arkham Knight, but I do know for a fact that that game is now available for Switch 1, although technically speaking though, I would classify for maybe trying to get it on Switch 2, because obviously though, if I've heard that the Switch 2 is actually much better in terms of like frame rates and all that stuff, like usually it's on stable 30 FPS, despite the visuals are still not great, in terms of the forms of Nintendo platform version of the forms of, you know, Batman Arkham Knight. But regardless of everything else though, it's about the fact that, what the heck just happened right there? Because I was able to try to flutter jump to try to get that red coin without needing to worry about trying to get the owl out. Although we still need able to actually try to hang on to the actual, well, an owl itself in order to actually try to get into the volcano itself. So, I mean, usually relatively speaking though, because like I said before, the majority of the worlds in this ROM hack are just simply just, you know, bite-sized and all that stuff, so making a lot of exploration factor in terms of the forms of this ROM hack quite fun to experience as far as I do realize, so... But I digress. And in terms of the forms of the updated highest grossing films, in terms of the forms of 2025 so far, well, suffice to say, we actually got quite a few updates in terms of the forms those specific films have been listed. So, for instance though, Neo Zero 2 is still on top in terms of the forms of the highest grossing films of 2025 so far. And in terms of second place though, something has been changed, and there's no surprise considering about the fact that a Minecraft movie is now no longer on the forms of second place in terms of the forms of the highest grossing films of 2025. And why do I guess that? Well, as you might expect, Lilo & Stitch live-action movie has now taken over on, technically, second place overall in terms of the forms of the highest grossing films of 2025. And it's also worth noting for, is actually getting very close to 1 billion. I'm guessing it's probably because about the fact that it's all thanks to merchandising as far as I'm aware. So chances are though is about the fact that yeah, it's not surprising there. Although, that film is currently now on to $972 million for its box office, so yeah, that's something. So meanwhile, in terms of the forms of a Minecraft movie, that obviously though, unfortunately that film never make it to $1 billion for its box office, but it's awfully close, so, which, as you probably expect at this point. So, anyway, and also, as far as I'm aware, a Minecraft movie is now on to 3rd place right now. And in terms of 4th place though, we actually got ourselves Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, and as far as I'm aware, that film is currently now on to $576 million for its box office, so it's doing rather well, so either way. And 5th place goes to How to Train Your Dragon live-action movie version, and as far as I'm aware, that film is currently now on to $516 million for its box office. I'm guessing similar something very similar to the forms of how it does it on Lilo & Stitch remake. That obviously though about the fact that one of those merchandises seems to come into play. In terms of the forms of How to Train Your Dragon live-action version, at least I did somehow spotted them so far. Well, I spotted a couple of them during the forms of in some stores, so that's besides the point. So, and meanwhile, in terms of the forms of 6th place, it goes to Detective Chinatown 1900, and 7th place now goes to Captain America Brave New World, and it's kind of unfortunate that Thunderbolts did somehow stops in Journey forms of some time ago in terms of the forms of the box office earnings. So no matter what though, it somehow stops by $381 million for its box office, which as a result, it doesn't seem to able to actually have that much in terms of box office earnings. But in 9th place, however though, goes to Sinners. And finally for 10th place is actually the newest film at the time, and that's what appears to be Jurassic World Rebirth. And as far as I'm aware, currently that film is now on to $318 million for its box office. And speaking of Jurassic World, I somehow managed able to get started watching those Jurassic Park films, or to be more specifically, both Jurassic World and Jurassic Park as well. So generally speaking though, so far I actually did manage able to watch the first 3 of those Jurassic Park films, and somehow I've only enjoyed one of them, and that's of course the first film in terms of the forms of Jurassic Park. And meanwhile for Jurassic Park 2, it was okay, and as far as the 3rd one is concerned, I'm not a big fan of it, mainly because, not only because of how the fact that the actual editing feels a bit, I don't know, slightly rushed. There's also reassuring about this too, that Jurassic Park 3 is actually the shortest in terms of the forms of the film series as far as I'm aware. Although at the moment right now, I'm currently on to Jurassic World, to be more specifically though, released in 2015, which gee, I can't even believe that particular film is going to be 10 years old by that time once we're able to still on to, well, 2025 of course. So, because chances are though we can able to like celebrate the actual 10th anniversary of the film's release as far as I'm aware. But we shall see. So either way, so there's the 3rd silver star right there. So I'm sure enough that was about the fact that once we, oh jeez, that was close. And it's also reassuring about this too, I've almost gonna get myself screwed over during the forms of the volcano section, because as far as I'm aware, if you do die at one point, and if you jump back into the actual level itself, well, similar to the forms of how it does it in Super Mario 64, as well as Super Mario 64 DS, that you are obviously though you're able to go onto the resuming point in terms of whatever area you reach to. So, at least as far as I'm aware of, so Oh, okay, there we go. So we need just the 5th silver star, which I think is going to be all the way to the top. So, yeah, we'll definitely have to figure something this out. So, yeah, I guess that's all there is to it in terms of the forms of the updated list, in terms of the forms of the highest grossing films of 2025 so far. By that time, during the forms of on the 4th of July, according to the forms of the actual data report. So, anywho, it is also reassuring about this too, speaking of the forms of Nintendo Switch 2, is that what I've noticed is about the fact that both The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, specifically the Switch 2 editions of those two games specifically, they somehow recently got themselves the yet another version update, which I know for a fact it has been quite some time, like I said before, since I actually mentioned something like this. So chances are though is about the fact that I'm pretty sure on, let's just say, I have no words, but either way, I suppose that particular discussion can wait though, during at some point in the next day or something like that. So, after all though, it's about the fact that it's also reassuring about this too, about the fact that yes, just like the forms of how it does it on, well, let's just say, Sonic Mania Adventures, and in addition to, Team Sonic Racing Overdrive, and on top of that, Sonic Colors Ultimate Rise of the Wisps, or Sonic Colors Rise of the Wisps, and in addition to a prologue thing, for the sake of the forms of Sonic Frontiers animated shorts, and on top of that with the forms of Sonic Superstars, and also same applies with Sonic X Shadow Generations. Obviously though, much like those games in particular, it may look like that there's going to be yet another animated short that this time around though is going to be focusing on Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, and as far as I'm aware, the animated short is going to be more accurately going to be releasing during at some time on September, which I think that was before when the actual game decides to release itself. I mean, chances are though, I'm very curious to know to be able to try to check that particular animated short out. So chances are though is about the fact that my expectations might be stackingly high, because obviously though, in Journey Forms of it last year, that I really do enjoy the 3-part prologue in terms of the forms of, you know, let's just say Dark Beginnings, for the sake of the forms of Sonic X Shadow Generations prologue series. So chances are though is about the fact that I'm not entirely sure if it's going to be likely a 3-parter or a 2-parter, based off for the sake of the forms of Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, but we shall wait and see. Until, to be more specifically, God knows until whatever they decide able to bring Sonic Central Direct to the table, or anything else like that. I mean, chances are though is about the fact that we've already got a bunch of information for the sake of the forms of Sonic Racing Cross Worlds already, ever since around a couple of days back. So, but yeah, that's as far as the forms of information itself goes. Oh, and there's also reassuring about this too. We actually got ourselves the opening cinematic cutscene, which as a result, it does look very spectacular, much like the forms of how it does it on Team Sonic Racing, which, truth be told though, it's been such a very long time since we last got ourselves some amazing CGI opening cutscene for a Sonic game. So no matter what though, it's about the fact that I'm pretty sure that they also got the theme song of this too. That's what appears to be called Cross the Worlds. So as a result though, I'm not entirely sure who performs that song personally though, but I'm also able to do a massive research on it during at some point in a later time, because for now, as you can see, we've met again with Goomboss. So to be more specifically though, if I like to call it like the forms of Goomba King, because obviously though, referencing the forms of the original Paper Mario, which you get the idea for this point. Now, as far as boss battles are concerned, they are basically unchanged compared to the forms of how it does it on the actual Super Mario 64 DS game. So obviously the arena itself is basically left untouched. So the major differences though is of course the environment background. So I think that's the only changes as far as I'm aware of. So although you still need to be able to try to avoid the poison water or anything else like that. So chances are though you have to still able to try to hit Goomboss for about 3 times, either trying to able to actually use the Goomba as a projectile, or you can able to actually use one of Yoshi's eggs. So, because yeah, that was the only method we can able to try to deal some bit of damage to Goomboss. So, relatively an easy fight if you pretty much know what to do for this point. So, yeah, like I said before, that's as far as I can try and able to explain about the forms of today's subject at this point. I mean, mind you though, I do apologize about the fact that my commentary is a bit slightly iffy sometimes, but that's just mainly because, well, for whatever reason though, it's about the fact that my throat just feels a bit, kind of croaky sometimes. So, oh well, no big deal. At the very least though, it's about the fact that I did mention about quite a number of things here and there. Oh, and I suppose there's technically the final thing I want to discuss upon. That's what appears to be for the fact that one of those films in particular has recently celebrated its 30th anniversary, and that's what appears to be none other than Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, which I've never watched it personally, because generally speaking I was about the fact that I'm more into like Disney stuff back in the day, and on top of all that stuff though, I'm still into the films of the Powerpuff Girls, in addition to My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, and nowadays with Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, old cartoons, and on top of that, Tiny Toon Adventures as well. Well, that's just me, so either way though, and suffice to say though, gee, I can't believe that particular film has been out for 30 years, since 1995, around the exact same year as when new films of when Batman Forever did came out, and in addition to, of course, GoldenEye, the James Bond movie, and on top of that, Toy Story and Pocahontas. So, yeah, you get the idea for that point. So, and also I just realized that this ROM hack seems to able to have some missing sound effects, but if you do manage to unlock a new character, like Mario for instance, and as a result though, yeah, we can now finally play as Mario for reals now. So as a result though, this means we can now able to actually decide to do some more objectives here and there. So, because chances are though is about the fact that after all, that I believe we've only now on to 20 power stars so far, so once again we did somehow collected about 10 power stars in this video, so hopefully we're able to guarantee to able to gather more during at some point in later on. So chances are though is about the fact that sometimes though, well, you can get the idea what I was expecting to able to try to mention about the well, it's hard for me to say. Well, regardless of such though, is about the fact I'm still having a lot of fun with this ROM hack so far already, despite the controls might be felt a bit iffy sometimes. But regardless of such though, yeah. So suffice to say for this point guys, is that we got the endings of this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of another Super Mario 3D, a ROM hack of Super Mario 64 DS, is that we're about to be going into more stages, and of course gather some more power stars and all that. So I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later fellas.